Hey friends, Dr. Mitnaul, your friendly neighborhood child and adult psychiatrist. Welcome back. I'm glad that we have some time to start our morning together. And today I forgot my coffee. I'm actually just drinking water, but you're welcome to do that. So get into it if that's going to help you too. So today's topic is one that I sometimes hear. Often I can sense that maybe families are thinking it, or maybe they're relating it to other staff, and certainly people in every specialty kind of get this question. So why don't we talk about it here? And the question is, why do I have to come in and see the, doc or see the therapist or whomever I'm seeing, when I'm feeling good? What might be reasons for doing that? And so while some of these things might be intuitive to you, I think for a lot of people it's a little bit of a struggle, and especially when we're talking about young people or really anyone for that matter, but especially young people. Parents are concerned that if I'm going to take my child out of school, or they're going to miss an activity, and I have to miss work, that I certainly want my time to be valued and to be put towards the mental wellness of my child and our family, or whatever's going on. And so at least understanding the rationale for periodic check-ins may help you to get the most out of your next appointments, and also to know a little bit of the inside of what it is that we're doing during the appointment, and why they really are so important. So let's jump in. All right, so one of the first things that are really helpful is data gathering on what works. As you might imagine, families or individuals see me at a point of crisis, and perhaps if it's not crisis, it's just a period at which a lot of functional things aren't happening very well. So the child may be getting kicked out of school, or really struggling with traumatic nightmares due to experiencing some really close trauma, or really falling behind in their academic performance in school, or being unable to make friends. So all of these things might be urgent things that we need to attack, or at least create a plan around to help them to do really well. And so we are rejoicing with you when we make it to that place where, hey, we can relax a little bit. We don't need to see each other nearly as frequently, and we can space those things out. In child psychiatry, often the furthest that we tend to do those things tends to be somewhere on the order of 2 to 3 months. Now, of course, that's not set in stone, and every individual and family and case is going to be a little bit different, but that might be the furthest stretch. And even then, sometimes I wonder if parents are thinking, okay, but things are going so well, or we've had a beautiful 3 months. What could we have to talk about or check in on? And so here are just a couple of things, or some of the main things too that I'm running through as I'm thinking about the child that I'm seeing, the family that I'm seeing, the adult that I'm seeing. Number one is collecting data on what works. And it's really, we learn from what's working in your life as well. I mean, often we've read a lot of, material and books, and have made tons of recommendations, but often it's up to the family to, implement or put these things into practice, or up to the individual to put those things on, and to, maybe use the mindfulness, or use the exercise, or find ways to reconnect to friends, or a social support group. And so often what's happening is a lot of problem solving happens. We start here in the office, but really a lot of the beautiful work happens in the community, happens where you are, happens at your home or in your neighborhood. And so it's helpful for us to spend some time reflecting on it, because sometimes people are solving their own kind of personal dilemmas, or things that were blocking them from being successful, but maybe they haven't taken the time to concretely think about that. Okay, what is it that I'm doing? How have I really changed my schedule, or change some of my habits, so that I'm feeling better, and I'm thriving, or I'm flourishing, or my child is flourishing even more. And so sometimes having that meeting allows us to make those things concrete. And so how can we use that in the future? Well, in the future, it allows us to think, okay, when it's, the winter months, or it's been 2 years hence, and you've been thriving, but you find yourself maybe in a depressive episode, or really struggling with anxiety, we're able to kind of push pause and look back on what are the other things that were also working. I mean, yes, we do prescribe, medication if that's indicated or needed at the time. But again, psychiatrists, we recognize there's no skill in a pill, meaning that, as good as the medication is at helping attune the brain to be able to, perhaps achieve its best if that's needed, there are just so many other important things like diet, like exercise, like habits that play such an integral role that if we don't understand what those things are and what they mean in a person's life, then we might be missing out on the future cure, on how to help them to live their best life. So collecting data. So that's number one, and really kind of a big part of why we check in on the good times. Number two, looking out for habits. And so you might have had this experience, I know I have as a parent, where you've decided, okay, your children are playing and they have a broken, plastic lightsaber, and you decide, okay, we're just going to go with the quick fix rather than, replacing it or spending extra money. And maybe you pull out the duct tape. So it keeps it together and it's maybe functional for the moment, but it's actually not going to be the solution that lasts for any considerable amount of time. And so sometimes when we see people, they're doing, really quite well, and in that wellness, they may have adopted some habits that maybe are functionally helpful and necessary. Those things may be necessary at the time, but they might not be the fix that helps them in the long run. And so often I'm checking in with someone too, and I'm asking and trying to get a sense of what's working in their lives, I'm also looking at the strategy and trying to talk with them about what are things that might get in the way of this being helpful in this context or in this scenario, or at school or at summer camp, or when you no longer have this particular teacher. What are we going to look forward to replace or support this part of your life? So looking at the strategy, looking at the technique, seeing if there are things that we can do to shore up and help the fix or help the support be a long-term thing and not just a short-term thing. All right, what's a third? A third is sometimes preparing people for life, and so the truth is, we are often traveling through kind of peaks and valleys, and so when we're feeling really good, our thinking can sometimes tend towards the positive, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can sometimes forecast a future in which no obstacles exist, right? So you're feeling really good, you've gotten on stage, or you've done the really big essay, and sometimes we want to have that rocky moment where our hands are in the air, and you totally should. You should celebrate that moment. But it would be foolish to assume there isn't going to be another hurdle, or something else that comes up that could be just as intense, or equally intense, or maybe a little bit more intense than the previous victory you've celebrated. So sometimes helping to get people prepared, or at least in the mindset. We don't want to take away the joy of celebrating where their current victory is, but let's look at the future too, and help make sure that the mindset is aware that there might be giants for us to tackle in the future, and so how do we kind of shore up our minds and make them strong so we're ready to take those things on as well. And then last of some of the top four things, at least, that I'm looking at when someone is seeing me and they feel like they're doing really well and in a really good space. The other is, there can be just a lot of developmental changes, and especially in the life of children, the difference between having a mustache and not having a mustache can happen in those 3-month window. Growth spurts, or just other kind of life circumstances and changes, and it can be really helpful to both identify those and to track them, even if we're not talking about what that might mean for their future or how we might have to change things, but that is really important. And maybe in this, also thinking about this not only just kind of developmentally, but in terms of tolerance of a certain intervention or treatment can change over time. And then there are things that certain medications or certain interventions might affect, like the way that you eat and the things that you're putting in your body, and the sleep that you're getting, and that sort of thing. And so looking at your heart rate and blood pressure and weight and all those things can really be helpful and give us a lot of information on what life looks like for you and how to be more supportive and helpful in your journey to success. All right, my friends, I hope that's been helpful. Hopefully that's opened up a window of what it is that we're doing, even seeing you in the happy times. I want you to take good care, my friends, and be well.